Hello and welcome to an episode that talks about alternative journalism. I am Sakshi Mandwal and our subject expert is Ms. Swati Singh, a media professional for the last 12 years, specialized in mass communication, having worked as a media professional with Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Career Launchers, Times of India, etc., and have also taught digital and new media in various universities and colleges, including Delhi University. Today we shall be discussing about the new age modern journalism that is also known as alternate journalism. We would today explore the meaning, utility and tools of alternate journalism. In the process, we shall learn about its various dimensions and relevance in today's world. Now, let's start by discussing the objectives of this episode. Objectives of the lesson are to define alternate media, to understand the ideological dimension of alternate media, to discuss about the distinction between alternate and mainstream media, to learn about internet as a tool of alternate journalism, to learn about social media as an alternate media, to discuss about the advantages of alternate journalism, to learn about the shortcoming of alternate journalism. Defining alternate media. Historically, alternative media has been a crucial resource for social movements and marginalized groups in the United States. Revolutionary pamphleteers helped fan the flames of independence against the British. A vibrant abolitionist press kept alive the anti-slavery movement for decades preceding the Civil War. Similarly, a popular working class press was integral to the bourgeoisie labor movement in the first half of the 20th century. In the early 1900s, the advertising supported socialist newspaper The Appeal to Reason reached nearly 1 million subscribers and helped advance the socialist candidate Eugene Debs' presidential ambitions. During the 19th and 20th centuries, an ethnic press provided sustenance for various marginalized cultural groups. Likewise, an underground press helped sustain the civil rights movement and other activist groups during the 1960s. More recently, with the rise of internet, the media environment is changing. Internet has complicated the binaries between alternative and mass media by lowering barriers to entry and enabling new network-based forms of media organizing. In the broader sense of alternative media, this simply may mean a wider distribution for non-mainstream political points of views, such as those found on alternate or commondreams.org. In other cases, the political opportunities amplified by the internet are far more radical and democratizing. A classic example of the latter can be found in indiemedia.org. Founded during the November 1999 World Trade Organization protests in Seattle, Indymedia allowed anyone with internet access to be the media by uploading news content, print, photos, audio or video to the website. With the explosion of the blogosphere, this kind of do-it-yourself media is increasingly commonplace. Taken as a whole, this subgroup of alternative media has sometimes been referred to as cyber activism or simply internet activism. This brings us to an important question. What is the ideological dimension of alternative media? The ways in which alternative media challenge mainstream assumptions and rearrange social relationships often places them consciously or by default under the rubric of progressive politics. Another important question could be, how do mainstream and alternative media audiences differ? They differ mostly because of the nature of these two types of media, especially their audiences differ greatly. Most alternative media companies are much smaller than their mainstream counterparts. These outlets are also typically polarized in the content they produce. Some alternative media houses are geared towards polarized political views. Some produce mostly liberal content, while others produce mostly conservative content. These media houses are also typically not linked with the television, but mostly distribute their content via newspapers, radio, and these days the internet. The rise of the internet led to the explosion of alternative media, as it allows them to reach and expand an audience much more cheaply than mainstream media can. Because of all these factors, alternative media audiences are typically small, segmented, according to their views and perspectives, and mostly reside on the internet. They don't have to be polarized according to their political or social views, though this is the most common form of polarization, but they could also be segmented according to industry, such as engineering or medicine. Distinction between alternate media and mainstream media. Mainstream media covers much larger audiences and has much greater funding. Think of the most well-known news channels such as Fox News, CNN and BBC, as well as websites like the New York Times and USA Today. The audiences of such media houses are typically more diverse, though they can still be polarized according to political views, and far more numerous than the audiences of alternative media houses. Another kind of interesting distinction between the two types of media is the ease with which they can be located online. Mainstream media sources are very easy to search, while alternative media outlets are much more harder to access. Supporters of alternative media are still faithful to their sources. Also, they do not trust mainstream media. There is yet a third kind of audience that prefers to use both mainstream and alternative media for their benefit, and so is partial to neither. This middle ground audience is smaller in number than mainstream media audiences, yet larger in number than alternative media audiences. Now that we have understood that internet is also seen as an alternate journalism tool, let us discuss and define it. Internet as an alternative journalism tool. Today, online content is widely recognized as being any form of journalist content that is posted on the internet. The news could be in the form of a text, audio or video form, and because it does not have to print and distribute content, it is much faster than traditional journalism. The thrill and uniqueness of online journalism is that people can use the internet to access news and events 24 hours a day. They also like to fit their reading into busy lives, so content is shorter, crisper and more to the point than it used to be. Articles are not as long as an alternative to long stories. GIFs can be glanced at in a few seconds, and in fact places such as the BBC now offer 15-second snippets of longer interviews. Considering the brevity of the content, the role of a digital journalist is more about compiling content sourced from places such as social media. There is a focus on getting a lot of information into a short space. In many digital articles, hyperlinks link to video or photos that have been taken on camera phones and posted on Facebook or YouTube. For students of journalism, courses that give information on how to search for such content will be useful. The legal aspects of this, such as copyright and plagiarism, must also be learned to get more insight into the world of online media. Now, we further talk about online journalism being interactive journalism. People can now react to journalism in a way that was impossible before the internet. Nowadays, articles have a comment section where people can get involved and give their opinion. For journalists, this particular feature allows feedback they would not have had with traditional journalism. But it also means that content is harder to control. With internet, the way journalists research stories has changed as well. In the past, journalists would often make calls to public relation offices. But nowadays, journalists mostly refer internet. In fact, they do a lot of research using social media, known as crowdsourcing. In a study by ING last year, it was found that about 50% of journalists use social media as their main source of information. Journalists can also monitor stories using hashtags. Hashtags allow journalists to track a story, compile information from multiple sources, and find an exact type of audience who is already interested in the topic they are writing about. There are also tools for journalists to analyze the popularity of their own posts. Websites such as Hashtagify allow journalists to see the popularity of hashtags and allow them to use the most relevant hashtag to appeal to a wider audience. We now move on to learn about the growth of independent news portals and alternate journalism. New media as alternative media has recorded significant growth in the past decade, mainly because it has low fixed cost involved in venturing in this media. It has lowered the entry barrier for the young entrepreneurs to start their own media shops. Moreover, it is the conversion point of all the media as it amalgamates print, text, pictures, radio, audio, and TV, that is video, into one, which makes it more interactive, and that is why it is called a multimedia platform. The instant nature of new media has diluted delayed feedback nature of the other mass media. These days, many freelance journalists have started their own websites which act as an alternative to the mainstream media. Examples of some such websites are goodnewsindia.com, infochangeindia.com, and Lokmanch, a Hindi language website. These voices dissent against the ruling class. Marynews.com, launched in 2006, is one of India's largest citizen-based news portal which allows citizens to express their views on any topic. Its editorial team further scrutinizes the reports submitted by the citizens and has started publishing its city-specific tabloid. There has also analyzed social media as alternate media. Social media has provided platform to individual citizens to participate in contemporary debates and discussions. This phenomenon is also referred to as citizen journalism. Interestingly, these days people also rely on Twitter for breaking news than the news channels. To them, Twitter is the place where one gets different opinions that may not find a place in dominant mainstream media. Social media encourages real-time reporting, and therefore, most of the stories, whether negative or positive, get highlighted. Half a decade ago, many important controversial stories would have been buried by the mainstream media. But now, with the power of social media, it is not easy to suppress information. Social media gives platforms to the citizen to become a producer through their blogs, tweets, status updates, articles, etc. Earlier, it was difficult to think of owning one's own newspaper or television channel because of heavy fixed costs involved. But now the new media and especially social media have made it easier for the young journalists to become entrepreneurs. There is not much cost in starting and streaming a channel of your own. Also, it really benefits not just with the quick telecast of content, rather the huge reach that no media can promise before internet. Here one may ask the questions, how many people have access to social media? So the answer is that it still is not an urban and elite-centric media. How many times has any rural-centric issue become the most debatable issue on social media? Another important question can be, has it become a promotional tool lately? All these questions are relevant, and at times social media does end up being a promotional tool rather than being a platform for discussion and debates. The credibility and authenticity of the content on the social media websites is also under question. At times, information uploaded in haste leads to serious consequences. There is a need to cross-check the facts before completely believing them. Even if an individual uploads something on social media, it is very important for the producer to be socially responsible and sensitive. One such example is of an Egyptian revolution, said to be one of the mass movement triggered by social media. In 2011, in Egypt, the socio-political economic condition was extremely depressing that general masses, with the help of social media, shook the government in power. The mainstream media of Egypt was under the state control. People chose to voice their dissent through social media. Twitter and Facebook were used rigorously to organize mass agitations and demonstrations against the government at Tahrir Square, which resulted in the resignation by Hosni Mubarak from presidency, and the powers were transferred to the armed forces of Egypt. Later, the Supreme Court convicted him for life imprisonment for the failure to stop killings during the first 6 days of Egyptian revolution in 2011. Another example closer to home is the Anna movement of 2011, or India Against Corruption, is credited to be one mass movement which was initially engineered by the social media of India, later joined by the mainstream media, and set the agenda for coming months. In December 2012, the infamous Delhi gang rape in a bus led to media uproar, and social media again became a tool to unite people for Nirbhaya movement. This had pressurized the legislature to amend the rape law of the country. Yet another example of social media phenomena was the support to Jallikattu in January 2017 in Tamil Nadu, wherein numerous Tamilian supporters gathered at famous Marina Beach in Chennai to lend their support to save their tradition and culture. Jallikattu is a bull taming sport held during Pongal. It was banned by the Supreme Court. Large share of this movement goes to social media and mobile messaging applications. But there are certain possible problems with alternative new age journalism. Let us discuss these in brief. These days, since sharing opinions is so popular in digital journalism, the line between fact and opinion can be blurred. Next, the journalists need to think about the accuracy of content on different platforms and consider their sources carefully. The aforesaid problem has cropped up due to the demand for breaking news. Many journalists now publish articles without checking the facts in order to get the article out quicker. Also, these days, corrections and retractions are becoming more common. So, it is important for journalists to follow up on work they have published to ensure it is still accurate and change it if it isn't. This does look bad in terms of new writing and credibility. A constant and thorough check needs to be done for countering such errors. Many a times, journalists cross the thin line between a sting operation and violating privacy of people. Especially with the use of online tools, the spread of news has become very easy. This makes the reporter vulnerable. There has to be some amount of accountability attached to journalism, especially alternative journalism. Use of unparliamentary language or rude words used to counter an argument are also common in media these days, especially online media where there is no or minimum check or censorship. This calls for serious review. Now let's go on further and discuss about the skill set required for digital or alternative journalism. No doubt that having a smartphone and the right editing software is a good way to start off in the field of modern journalism. However, tools without the ability and know-how to use them won't matter much in an ultra-competitive field. Some basic skills that can help lead to a career as a journalist in the digital age are investigation. At its core, journalism is a storytelling profession, and the best stories aren't always obvious. They often require hours of interview, chasing down sources and leads, going down dead ends, and trying new paths. Whether working for a major news organization or paving their own route, the ability to hit on a story and track it to its conclusion is the hallmark of good journalists. Research. Research and investigation, although cut from the same cloth, are different skills. While investigators track down leads and work sources for new information, research involves studying books, old newspapers, and other media as background for stories. Like investigations, research stages can take weeks or months to discover a story's full background or to gain a proper appreciation of the bigger picture. Written communication. You can be a great interviewer or a video editor, but without the ability to write a compelling script or story, technical abilities won't matter. Writing will always remain a central tenet of journalism, and the best journalists all have the ability to file a strong story on deadline, even if their focus is in a different area. Basic web design. Using programs such as Adobe Photoshop, Adobe InDesign, and Adobe Illustrator, journalists can create graphics, video backgrounds, illustrations, and data visualizations to supplement their work. Although blogging platforms make it easy for independent journalists to establish their own sites cheaply, the ability to personalize a site and make it stand out makes a great first impression and can help hold readers' attention. Self-motivation. Newsrooms are shrinking and more journalists are working remotely or for their own publications. For self-publishing or entrepreneurial journalists, it can take several years of working around the clock to build up enough of a following or subscriber base to make a living, much less to grow their operation. Audio or video editing. Digital journalists need to know how to compile video, audio, images, and graphics into informative, captivating, compact multimedia stories called packages in newspeak for broadcast or the web. Understanding camera basics and proper framing and lighting doesn't cost journalists any extra, but will make their product look professional. The ability to use the right post-production programs to add graphics and enhance video and sound is also becoming commonplace. Lastly, let's conclude. Internet today has a significant role to play in our lives, especially with respect to news. Citizen journalism is a very integral part of our lives today. The common man is able to voice his opinions because of such forums. In fact, some very important movements got momentum due to internet. Like the Anna movement against corruption in 2011 became successful majorly due to social media interventions. It seems that internet is the way forward for news media. And now it is time for a quick recap. Today we discussed the meaning, need and significance of alternative or online journalism. We learned about the qualities, tools, etc. required with respect to online journalism. We also understood that online journalism has given voice to important issues, it's a powerful tool of democracy and has given birth to citizen journalism. Yet, it has to be practiced responsibly or it can brutally backfire and hurt innocent people. We also discussed about the skills required to work in alternate journalism. That is all that we had for you today. We do hope you enjoyed the session. We'll be back soon with more episodes on media ethics. Till then, take care and goodbye. Namaskar.